Odette Boudreau first felt the city before she ever saw it. At 5, she had gone profoundly deaf, and every year since, New Orleans explained itself to her in tremors. Trolley wheels rattling along St. Charles Avenue, the hum of outboard motors on Bayou St. John, the heartbeat thump that rose from French quarter clubs after dusk. When other children learned to read, Odette learned to read vibrations. On nights when the city shook hardest, she would sit on the wrought iron balcony of her aunt's Treem shotgun house and rest her bare feet on the rail, mapping the neighborhood by the quiver of her bones. By 16, she was a trumpet prodigy. She played each note like a secret she could only pronounce through brass, shaping pitches she could not hear but could feel in the back of her throat and the hollows of her cheek. Audiences went silent, then raucous, a couple her solos. They called her Ditty, short for Odette, and swore she channeled the ghosts of the city. She smiled politely, bowed, and tucked the compliment away with the others she collected, but never entirely believed. The dream began the Mardi Gras after her 19th birthday. It opened in blackness, then a single note, a low E, warm as dusk, unfolded inside her skull. Shocked, Diddy reached for her cochlear implants, but in the dream, her ears were bare and whole. A jazz refrain spread in spiraling riffs, trumpet, piano, snare, and something gravelly and unnameable she recognized as saxophone, but with a rasp of granite. Flames of slate-colored music curled around pillars carved with fleur-de-lis. She drifted past a stone archway and saw the band, gargoyles cut from the same somber rock that crowned old cathedrals, wings folded into capes, claws clicking valves and keys. They jammed under a ceiling of tangled roots, pierced here and there by street lamp glow leaking from the city above. She woke, gasping, half certain that for a moment she had heard. The next night she returned. Again the gargoyles wailed. Again she heard every scooping blue note, each ride cymbal whisper. When morning came, the city's clamour greeted her as a mute pantomime once more, yet a faint aftertaste of sound lingered, like chicory on her tongue. She signed to her aunt, "I dreamed of hearing," and the older woman crossed herself, whispering to protect Ditty from the disappointment she feared would follow. Instead, the dreams intensified. Ditty. She memorized the gargoyles' faces. There was the towering Bari sax player with dented horns protruding like double dog ears. The pianist, spindly as a crawfish whose talons ticked limestone keys that sprouted straight from the floor. A drummer who kept sticks inside his jagged jaw when not using them. And centered before them stood a trumpeter, carved from volcanic rock, lips chipped in the exact curve of a Dizzy Gillespie bell. During waking hours, Ditty started visiting churches, staring up at their stony guardians. She'd press a palm to each pedestal, feeling for the faintest hum. Nothing. But on the 6th evening, outside St. Louis Cathedral, she felt a dull thrumming as persistent as a second heartbeat. She raised her eyes. The trumpet gargoyle perched high on the roof, mouth frozen around a horn. On impulse, she lifted her trumpet case, slid the instrument free, and blew a line she had lifted from the dreams, a riff that climbed 3 octaves before curling downward with a laugh. The stone mouth glowed. An ember the size of a candle flame flitted behind its granite lips. Odette staggered back. The ember winked out, but she had her proof. She needed an ally who could hear what she could not, so she visited Marcus Renard, her oldest friend, a drummer whose family ran a small music shop off Royal Street. Marcus knew her rhythms better than anyone. He had learned American Sign Language alongside her. She described the dream's hands flashing, eyes blazing, then placed a palm on his heart so she could feel the change in his pulse when he finally believed her. They returned to St. Louis Cathedral after closing time. Marcus lugged his snare. Ditty shouldered her trumpet. They played together softly, Marcus brushing the drumhead like sweeping dust from a porch. Once again, the stone trumpeter kindled. This time, so did the saxophone gargoyle beside him. Sparks dribbled from its bell-like molten pebbles. Marcus gaped. Ditty grinned, teeth catching moonlight. She signed, "The music wakes them," and Marcus nodded, throat bobbing. Beneath New Orleans, miles of forgotten tunnels riddled the earth like crawfish burrows. Sewer lines, collapsed Prohibition-era speakeasies, hideouts from piracy times. Rumour said root systems of the city's live oaks braced the whole honeycomb-like netting. Ditty, certain the Gargoyles Club hid down there, spent the next week mapping manhole locations and storm drain reaches. Marcus, equal parts terrified and exhilarated, filed the paperwork for a parade performance permit that would allow them to wander after dark carrying instruments without incurring police suspicion. 6 nights after the cathedral incident, they found a drain wide enough for 2 and pried the iron grate free. Hot air smelling of moss and muffaletta rose to greet them. Marcus descended first, phone light ahead. Ditty followed, trumpet slung across her back. The tunnel twisted downward until brick walls dissolved into ancient mud. Very faintly she felt vibrations, impossibly faint but rising. Marcus paused, head cocked. He heard it too, a baritone sax growling at 12-bar blues. They emerged into a cavern where phosphorescent fungi clung to roots like Mardi Gras beads. The band from Ditty's Dream stood on a makeshift stage of cracked tombstone slabs. When the gargoyles saw the intruders, the music skidded to a halt. Dust motes froze mid-air. The pianist drew claws across keys, producing a chord like rolling thunder. The saxophonist lifted his heavy brow ridges, eyes glowing furnace orange. Marcus squeaked, "We come in peace," while Ditty stepped forward, placing trumpet to lips. She played the opening riff she'd borrowed nights ago. The granite trumpeter answered with a counter-melody smooth as river silt. Then, in tones no living throat could shape, it spoke. "We know you, dream listener." Ditty shivered. She couldn't hear the words directly, yet they bloomed inside her skull exactly as they would in any hearing mind. Another impossible gift of this place. "I'm Odette," she signed out of habit, then whispered, voice rusty from disuse. "Ditty?" "Ditty," the stone trumpeter repeated. "I am Basalt Bow. These are my brothers and sisters. We keep the pulse of the city when daylight forgets it." Marcus, who could not understand the silent exchange, stared until Ditty translated aloud. The gargoyles set their instruments aside. Basalpo gestured around the cavern. "We carved this joint when the river was young mud. As long as we play, music rises through the roots, up the gutters, into your bones. But something is gnawing at the tune." At his words, thin cracks inchwormed across the ceiling, and a hiss like wind through a reed seeped down. The gargoyles tensed. "Silex," Bo said, voice dropping a quarry's depth. "The silence eaters." Legend, it turned out, long preceded human memory. Whenever a city grew loud enough, demons called Silex slithered up from bedrock, feasting on sound until streets fell hushed and brittle. Jazz-wild, improvisational, refusing to resolve confused them, kept them starving. New Orleans gargoyles had stood watch 3 centuries, fighting with brass and stone lungs. But the Silex had adapted, swallowing louder and louder bursts. Recently, whole neighborhoods woke to a disquiet that made even traffic feel distant. The Guardians were losing ground. "And then," Bo said, "one night we dipped into a riff so blue it slipped into your sleeping mind. You heard. Maybe because your ears are unlit rooms they cannot black out." His granite face softened. "Will you help us keep the music breathing?" Marcus hissed. "We can't fight demons." But Ditty's answer was already moving through her. "Yes," she said. To Marcus she signed, "You in." He swallowed, looked at the gargoyle's stony glints and nodded. Bo handed her a mouthpiece of obsidian, carved from night itself. "Your horn will carry dream sound awake." Ditty fitted it to her trumpet, feeling cold shimmer into the brass like ice water. That was how rehearsals began. Human and gargoyle jamming until dawn, they learned new chart songs built in odd measures whose gaps tangled the silex. Marcus practiced polyrhythms that spiraled inward like nautilus shells. Ditty learned to blow multiponics, splitting her breath so chords erupted from a single bell. She still couldn't hear in waking life, but within the cavern every note shimmered clear as a summer bell. Marcus took to touching her shoulder for on-beat cues. Sometimes she forgot to translate and he simply trusted, leaping into whichever tempo her body telegraphed. After one rehearsal, Bo explained the plan. Silex fed through cracks that opened where sound grew thin. On the eve of the next new moon, they would swarm the French Quarter to gorge on post-festival fatigue. If the gargoyles and their human allies could jam rooftops to riverfront from dusk to dawn without dropping a single beat, the creatures would starve for another cycle and slink away underground. But if they shred even one bar into silence, Bo warned, they anchor a breach. The hush spread street by street until the city lies still as a mausoleum. And once a town dies that way, it never grows loud again. Ditty imagined Bourbon Street wordless, second-line parades marching without tuba or shout. Her own trumpet, a gold trinket only felt, never heard. She practiced until lip muscles bled. The night arrived, humid as a steam kitchen. Gargoyles perched across rooftops like a stony choir, horns aimed at the sky, musicians below, called in secret by Marcus, waited in doorways and alleys with guitars, trombones, sousaphones. Many thought it a guerrilla festival. Only a handful grasped the stakes. At sunset, Ditty climbed to the cathedral roof with Bo's squad. Marcus balanced his snare on a stone balustrade. From up here, the French Quarter resembled a chessboard of gaslights. Bo nodded. Drums rattled alive. They opened with St. James Infirmary, stretching the lament into a swagger that lured night breezes. Ditty's first solo soared over Jackson Square, curling through magnolia trees. She felt each note land, a heartbeat against brick walls. For 3 hours, the air shook in joyous defiance. Tourists below gaped, phones aloft. Some swore they saw statues moving, but the music was too intoxicating to question. Then, at 11:30, a strange quiet peeled the western horizon. It looked like darkness, but was absence. No car engine rumble, no cicada whine. Street lamps still burned, yet the hush ate light as if sound had flavor. The celiacs were coming. The first demon slid from a manhole near Canal Street, limbs thin as tuning forks, head faceless save for a swallow hole where ears might meet. It inhaled, and the rev of a passing motorcycle vanished mid-roar, leaving riders panicking at a machine suddenly mute. More followed, streaming toward music like sharks scenting blood. The gargoyles blew harder, notes whipping against the creeping stillness. Ditty switched to circular breathing, refusing any gap. Marcus pounded, callousing rhythm into concrete. Silence rippled closer. Every few seconds, a trumpet on a distant roof went unheard, its player still puffing cheeks but emitting no sound. The silex collected those swallowed notes, growing taller, gleaming like black glass. Bo barked, "Bridge riff, now!" And all horns leapt an octave into a syncopated wall. The surge slowed the demons, but didn't stop them. Suddenly Ditty felt the roof tremble, cracks webbed under her feet. Asilex had surfaced on the ledge itself, devouring the pulse of Marcus's snare. One more gulp and the beat would die. She turned on the creature and blew the gargoyle's secret scalar run based on unfinished intervals. The obsidian mouthpiece lit with midnight flame. Sound erupted visible. Ribbons of indigo spiraled from her bell, slapping the demon's aura as Silex staggered, leaking fragments of stolen noise that floated back to Marcus's drumhead, where they re-knit into rhythm. The demon shrieked. Though no one heard the shriek, they felt the void it tore and lunged at her. Bo slammed it with a limestone cord. It cracked, dissolving into ash that smelled of muffled screams. "Nice," Marcus mouthed, sweat flying and rejoined the groove. Below, fights erupted on every block. Guitarists against silence worms, trombonists blasting sonic uppercuts. Whenever a musician faltered, a silex latched on, sucking the song from throat or string until fellow players rescued the tune with fresh riffs. It was combat choreography, each bar a shield. At 2 a.m., sky bruised purple, Ditty sensed exhaustion nipping the ensemble. Lips numb, arms trembling, she doubted they could last till dawn. The silex, though wounded, multiplied faster than they shattered. "Need bigger sound," she signed to Bo. The gargoyle pointed at the cathedral's bell tower. "Play the stones themselves." With that, he hoisted her trumpet case onto a bony shoulder and leapt, wings cracking from hiding like unfolded scaffolds. He landed halfway up the tower. Ditty clambered behind. At the top, they confronted Emmanuel, the 1819 cast-iron bell. It had not tolled for decades, mechanism rusted. Bo handed her a mallet etched from his own rib. "Strike, then blow through the gap." Ditty positioned the mallet. She inhaled, remembering the dream where music had first entered her, and swung. The bell quivered, giving off a frequency that felt like standing chest-deep in the Mississippi while a freight ship churned past. She pressed trumpet to lip, letting the vibration flood the horn. Notes burst, each carrying the bell's subsonic thunder. Sound thunderheads rolled from the tower, crashing into rooftops, scattering silex like leaves. Some tried to swallow the waves, but gagged. The frequencies were too wide, too swollen with overtones. All across the quarter, hushed instruments rekindled as the bell's resonance stitched silence shut. Musicians roared with renewed vigor. The silex fled, wings of hush beating frantic retreat toward the river. Gargoyles launched in pursuit, carving crescents through the sky. Ditty kept playing until the first grey smear of dawn peeled up behind Algeran's point. When sunlight licked the bell tower, every gargoyle froze mid-schloit, solid stone once more. Bo clung to the parapet, trumpet held like a crusader's banner. Yet before immobility sealed him, one eye flicked toward Ditty and winked. Below, street-level musicians blinked in confusion as the last echo faded. A tourist checked his phone. 6:07. IAMing. The city awoke to a hangover of inexplicable joy. Kids swore they'd dreamed statues singing. Ditty descended the tower leg-shaking, found Marcus on Jackson Square, and collapsed in his arms. She couldn't hear his whoop of triumph, but she felt its vibration rumble through his ribs. Days passed. Reports came in. Birdsong louder than usual, laughter carrying blocks farther, traffic horns rebounding like brass fanfare. Sound had a shine, honouring what almost vanished. Ditty returned to the cathedral roof each sunset, though the gargoyles slept. She practiced solos, knowing Bo and the others felt vibrations even in stone-locked hours. One twilight, as she packed to leave, she caught a whiff of charcoal and brass. A single note, bright as a halo, floated from the trumpet gargoyles, barely inaudible, to every ear on Bourbon Street, but unmistakable in her dreaming heart. It said, "Keep the beat."